Hi and welcome to another episode of Straight Out of Camera, proudly sponsored by Fujifilm South Africa. Joining me live in studio today is Managing Director of TechSmart.co.za, Mike Hubert. Mike, how are you doing, sir?
Leslie, how are you?
I'm very well. And in Cape Town, commercial photographer Leon Westhuizen. How's it, Leon?
Lekker.
So, gentlemen, we are talking about exhibitions today. We are fortunate to have one of our photographers exhibiting at this moment in time. And what I want to find out from you, Leon, is how do you start the process where you think your work is exhibitable?
It's a very treacherous minefield of thoughts, I think, because the thing is, everybody likes to call themselves a photographer because they own a camera, or because art is supposedly so everything goes, which actually isn't true. People think that you can call yourself an artist and therefore you are an artist, and therefore what you produce is art. It's a very weak argument in my mind, because it's only a one-sided perspective. You've got to know stuff. You can't just run in blind and say you're good. In the same way that I wouldn't trust somebody to be a good shot and shoot an apple off my head if he just walked into the nearest camera store, gun store, and bought himself a rifle. You need to have a technical background and experience, and know exactly what it is that you're going for. And that technical doesn't necessarily mean the execution, but the technical means understanding what art is and how it comes about and how it's shaped in terms of a concept. And I mean, I studied fine art, and the number of fine art photographs that I've made is actually quite small compared to the number of frames I have shot with cameras. They have to fit into a particular genre or a story, or there should be an expression of some kind of an idea. Art for the sake of just capturing an image and putting it on a wall, for me, then it may as well just be the stuff that you see in hotels that it's so generic it doesn't mean anything.
Would you say it's all about the concept then?
No, it isn't all about the concept. If it's all about the concept, then again, everybody has all of these amazing installations that we see from all the millennials now. They're so deeply invested into concept that the execution is rubbish, or no execution whatsoever. It's just a statement of intent. And for me, that's a failure. A good art, if you look at what the masters have produced, they were rebels. They didn't necessarily stick to the status quo. In fact, they spoke to history, they spoke to the present, and they spoke to the future by challenging people's perceptions and confronting them with something that was different from what you might find in terms of your thought process, in terms of what culture allows. I mean, there's a wide variety of places where you can connect to stuff. I found South Africans are a little bit behind schedule on this kind of a thinking, because I don't know, maybe we just isolated from good art and we don't have great art up on display for a very long time, and we are now starting to become a little bit more in tune, because I think internet allows for you to go and see what good images are, even if you don't have a gallery necessarily. The Zeitz-Mocker, for instance, that opened up recently here in Cape Town, which is this contemporary African art museum, I think it's going to be so important for South Africans to understand what good art looks like and how it's presented, and why something is art, and how long it takes to get to a point where you can exhibit something. It's not just a fly-by-night thing. If you do happen to find somebody who just picks whatever up and makes art instantly, those are more your savants. You're absolutely naturally crazy gifted. Even a guy like Picasso, if you think like he's a master artist, the number of works that he put out that he didn't even want to sign because they weren't good enough, they weren't actually artwork that he would put up. It's better than most people would ever produce in their life, but for him, he knew what he was capable of. And for him to call something art meant that he put his name on it and said, right, I'll sign off to that. There's an integrity from the side of the artist, that you're not making something, number one, to impress your audience. That is commercial work, and that's something that's bread and butter, whether that's painting the Sistine Chapel ceiling or whatever the thing is. But the point is, if you make art, I think at least 51% as self-indulgence and as a purity of your thought, that's where the value sits.
I'm glad you mentioned the new art gallery in Cape Town, because exhibition space is so important, isn't it? That you do have a place where you can go and see photos, or at least certain exhibitions.
I totally agree with that. When we speak with Marcus, I think he might have valuable input along those lines as well. But having a work on a computer screen versus having a work up printed or expressed in some form in a space where you have to make a mission to go to, somebody else took the time, the money, the effort to present that, you start getting a lot more curatorial, I think, if I made up the right word now. You start to whittle away the things that are almost good enough because they cost you money to make. So you just get the purest expression of this thing, by which then critics will come and tear it apart. And if it still stands up, then all of a sudden you've got something amazing.
Isley, you were in Düsseldorf recently.
Mm-hmm.
Did you manage to catch a couple of shows there, exhibitions?
Mike, unfortunately not. But one thing that is definitely prevalent is the fact that there are a lot of galleries in first world countries. And I think that's something that needs to be appreciated more in South Africa. I think that we are still very young at this, and it's probably going to take us another 50 years to get there. But unless we start printing our work, there's not going to be an appreciation for what we have actually taken. I think personally you have to have quite a bit of chutzpah in order to exhibit your work and put a value to it, especially if you're not a Michael Myersfeld, for example, that people are, sort of known by or know.
Yeah, and the printing process, of course, also a very important part of this whole deal, seeing the fact that you have to have something created. It's not just having it on Instagram or on Flickr or Facebook.
Well, I mean, if you look at what is presented on Instagram, do you think 20% of those images could be in a gallery? I don't know.
Well, I think certainly for a number of the top line guys, yeah, for sure. There's some beautiful, beautiful images on there. But it's, I'm not sure, I think for the most part, you've got different Instagram users, certain people just documenting their lives, other people going for that perfect shot. So, horses for courses, I suppose.
The thing, Leon, maybe you can help us here, is that we're running off an algorithm, and that algorithm is based on pictures we liked. So if you do not know those people that you would want to follow who is exhibitable, you're probably never going to see their work.
That's the one side of it, but the downside is that that we are very bad curators. This algorithmic approach to things also causes a more homogenous thing, like this. The idea of a cliche. Now, one person got 1 million followers because she's dragging her boyfriend by the arm and you never see her face. And, I so want to be part of that picture. And it gets so many likes. And then the next person does the same thing and the next person does the same thing. Or whatever Instagram filter is trending at the moment. So people watch trends because they want likes and therefore they produce for an audience. And for me, that even though the image might be interesting, I detach very quickly from that because the moment you see the recipe, you lose the soul. Then there's no character for me anymore, and that's like somebody just painting it's a previous success that you're repeating, and there's no exploration, there's no heart and soul in it. For me, that's a very lame approach to image making.
I'm also wondering if we're not losing that sense of iconic photos. The fact that these days we're exposed to so many images, you lose that kind of sense of, the Marilyn Monroe shot or something, where in the past you had Time Life magazine printing pictures of Alfred Eisenstedt or so, and everybody was exposed to that one image, and it became such a lovely, iconic image that kind of stuck in your memory.
Yeah, there was a very deliberate intention with the beginnings of photography. When we shot film, every time you click a frame, there was intention because there was a cost to that. You don't want to waste stuff. Even now, there's this residual of that still. When people walk in front of my camera, everybody knows it's not a film camera. But they say, oh, sorry. So you didn't spoil the shot and you didn't waste any film. What are you sorry for? Maybe it's a South African thing that we just say sorry for a lot of stuff and we don't really mean we're sorry. I don't know. But the thing for me is that when you are intentional about the moment when you make an image, when you are in that process of of taking that thought, that abstract thing in your head, and expressing it in a moment with photography. That kind of is lost because people do the spray and pray thing, and then they select from a million photographs later on to make sure that they've got that winning shot and get all the likes and the whatever approval online. You've lost the creative process right there. You've lost the ability to make art, to make a definitive image, because it's manufactured. It's not a true to the moment thing, and it's a very puristic, I think, view of making images like this. But if you get it down to a point where I challenge people to get out of their comfort zone, for instance, I've built this into some of my photo walks. I tell them, put your camera onto black and white mode. Many people don't even know how to do this, and shoot in JPEG only. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy those images straight off, and you pick the one that's your best one. And if you can, bring a small memory card, one of the old ones, so you only have maybe like 36 shots on it. Make it as hard as possible. Tape up the LCD on the back. Really challenge people to engage with the moment more than the idea that they'll fiddle with a photograph and make it great later on. Then you start to see very interesting changes in people's mindset and approach, even in the way that they shoot with digital.
brandlive.co.za.
Have you ever thought about the power of social media? Social media has the power to make your business grow. Grow! Yeah. Why don't you let us manage your social media? Because our business is to see your business grow. Visit us at www.bstownmedia.co.za.
Live from 27 Boxes in the heart of Melville, this is brandlive.co.za.
Our guest for today is Marcus Vorsdorfer, who was born and raised in Germany and is a watchmaker by profession. He moved to Johannesburg in the late 1980s, where his interest in photography started. His genre ranged from classical portraiture and fine art nude to landscape and macro photography. He was successfully exhibited in group exhibitions in South Africa, Germany and China, and also a new one in the Rosebank Photo ZA Gallery. Marcus, welcome to the show.
Hi, how are you?
Cool. Tell us a little bit about the new show called Drift Art.
Drift Art. Well, Drift Art came about during a holiday in Zanzibar. I was actually just enjoying the beach and walking around and taking images of the fishermen going out to sea when I came across a piece of fabric sticking out of the beach. And I started looking at it and walked around it and looked at it from all sides, and suddenly I saw a fish in it. And that's how it started. You know, it's all about fabrics that have been washed up onto the beach, and where the tides, ebb and flow, the sun, sand, wind, water has shaped it around and turned it into real art pieces.
It seems a little bit strange because Zanzibar is such a beautiful place.
It is indeed.
And now you're focusing on these almost like sculpture-like objects in the sand.
It just like popped at me suddenly. Yeah, no, it's an awesome place, and you can easily overlook the detail that is around. You know, Zanzibar has a lot to offer. Beautiful place. It wasn't easy to find these items. You know, they're not just lying around. So, I started looking for them.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So when you're in that mind frame, Marcus, of being surprised by something that you find and then investigating that thought pattern, how do you? I mean, obviously you don't prepare for the first moment, but how do you go from that first moment when you saw the first one, and what kind of thoughts go through your mind? Because I mean, this is the creative process that is individual to you, but there's commonality in the way that we see the things around us. How do you go about distilling that thought process?
Yes. Well, to me, it was like looking into the clouds. You know, when we grew up, we used to lie on the back and look at the sky, and we saw all sorts of things appear in the clouds, like dogs and Mickey Mouse and all sorts of things. And that is what happened to me when I was walking on the beach there. when suddenly these items of clothing and textiles, they appeared to me as more than just a piece of clothing, but they suddenly had an identity. You know, there was a howling wolf, there was a couple dancing, and so on. So yeah.
Then you just take it from there. So you leave a space, almost a margin, to discover something.
Absolutely. You know, everyone can see something else in it. And that's why during my exhibition, I did not title the images. I left them without titles deliberately so that whoever comes to see it, they can use their own imagination to see something different. You know, we don't need to agree what we see. It's all about up to the imagination of the onlooker.
Marcus, tell us about where your passion for photography started.
I was fascinated with the nature at first. I did a lot of traveling in South Africa, and that's how it started growing. You know, I bought my first camera, which was then not a Fuji. That's a long time ago. And that's how I went on. I did a couple of courses in photography, both in South Africa and abroad in Germany. And that's where I started exhibiting as well in Germany. I did architecture, exhibited in Düsseldorf in Germany, and it grew. I don't have a fixed subject. I like to explore all genres of photography. I don't like to be put in a box. So, as mentioned earlier already, I've done various other things. I did a photo shoot with Fujifilm a couple of years ago, and it was a completely different subject. So it was nude photography, which we did for the World Cup in 2014. And that was very successful, I think, and was well appreciated as well. But I like to do different things, so I change it all the time.
Do you find that there are certain similarities between watchmaking as a profession and photography?
To me, it is a lot. I think what watchmaking has brought to me in photography is that I look very detailed. I like a lot of detail in my photographs. So especially with drift art, it's well worth going to. You can stand at a distance and look at it and you see something, then you move very close and you see all the beautiful detail, the sand, the textiles, all the fabrics. And I think their watchmaking certainly has helped me along.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting that you mentioned that. It's I recognize a lot of what you're saying, find an accord with it, because there's a strong propensity for being technically exact and inquisitive, but also not being boxed into one thing. The multi-genre approach, I think, is part of what allows you to see outside of the expected. Because, I mean, most people go to Zanzibar and shoot all the expected holiday pictures. Yeah. And to be open to something else, you need to be bored with the expected.
Absolutely, yeah. I can't blame people for shooting a beautiful sunset or sunrise. Right?
No.
You must have certain experience also with your exhibitions in Germany. Do you find that there's a difference between photographers from Germany and South Africa?
Not really. We have here access, obviously, to our incredible wildlife that they don't have. But other than that, I don't see a huge difference. No, not at all.
A difference in the light, for example, in Germany?
In
South
light,
Africa?
certainly, yes. Lighting conditions in South Africa are a lot more contrasty. Sun is a lot more harsh, which I appreciate. I like it a lot. I really like harsh shadows and things like that.
Marcus, your exhibition at Photo ZA, the launch was about 2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago.
How long is this exhibition running for, and what's the time that people can go and visit the studio?
Right, great. So yeah, it's at Photo ZA in Rosebank Mall on the top floor. It's level 4. Entrance is Planet Fitness. And it's until the 23rd of December, so there's still plenty of time to go and see it. And if I'm not mistaken, they're open from 6 in the morning during the week till 5:30 in the afternoon, and on the weekends, I think from 9.
And you can order those prints that you exhibition. Oh, let's just hold on. And you can order the prints that you're exhibiting?
Yes, I'm selling the photographs framed at the gallery. They go at 3,500 Rand. They're beautifully framed. It's well worth it. I made a lot of effort in having it framed in a particular way that that really helps the images to stand out rather than the frame standing out from the image.
Where can we find you on the internet if we want to go and see the work before we go into the
Right,
exhibition?
so you'll find me on Instagram at mworsdorfer, so that's MWORSDORFER, or on my blog that is mworsdorfer.blogspot.com.
I've noticed that
And
you're
at
not on-
Facebook as well, yeah.
Marcus, in terms of the difference between walking around and snapping and that transition for photograph, especially, I find interesting to transition from a snap or a straight photograph to fine art. How would you define that to somebody else? Because people ask me all the time, and depending on who asks, I feel I have to give different answers. But do you have a standard answer to explain what fine art photography separates, how it separates from regular photographs?
I do not have a standard answer to that. I'm very honest.
So how
I
would you
think
explain
fine
it?
art
If I had to
is
be
a
the first person.
is a very wide area. Fine art to me is something that, for one, an image needs to be printed for me to be fine art. When it's on Instagram, it doesn't do it for me, or on a social media page or something like that. So for me, fine art photography requires to be printed, and only a print can show the real textures and fine nuances of a photograph. And any subject to me can be a fine art photograph if it's appreciated.
I like that. It's when you give it context by printing it, which requires it to be framed in a space.
Yes, absolutely. Once it's on a wall, then to me it becomes a fine art photograph.
It definitely takes it out of the digital sphere,
Yes,
making something
yes.
real. Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about how you go about organizing an exhibition.
That's quite a process. So unfortunately, I had been exhibiting with Johan from Cameras, who owns Photo ZA Gallery previously, and so we had a lot of contact already. I've known them for a very long time, and because of that, and he appreciated my photography, he approached me if I was interested in something, and I was working on this project at the time. So initially, it's of course, taking the photographs is one aspect, obviously, and selecting the right photographs that work well together for an exhibition. Printing, of course, is extremely important. In this case, I did the printing myself because I wanted to have everything exactly the way I wanted it to be. So I took the approach of rather doing it myself, and it came out exactly like I wanted, as well as with the framing as well. So I sat down with the framer, we discussed what would be the best way to display them, and so we came up with the solution of having the actual image as a floating image inside the frame. So you see the entire image, there's no border on it. Yeah.
Marcus, thank you very much for joining us in studio. If you are close to Rosebank or if you're in Joburg area, please go and visit Photo ZA. Marcus's work is up till the 23rd of December, and it's definitely worth it. And take your savings, go buy a proper piece of art. And thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Marcus.
Thanks.
Gentlemen, where can we find you on Instagram or on social media?
You can check out our site at www.techsmart.co.za or find me on Instagram at Fark1.
I am Leon Oosthuizen on Instagram or leonslens.com on Facebook, and that's also my website.